Everybody, it's Two Bald Nerds. That guy's Richard Chapman, and I'm Mike Meyers. And on this episode of Two Bald Nerds, we're going to be talking about something that folks do in a SOC a lot, and that is checking email. Right, Richard? Is that a lot of email checking? So there are lots of tools that we use within a SOC for checking email. The tool that we tend to work with mainly at CyberNow Labs is ProofPoint, which is probably, Richard, is it fair for me to say this is best in show email security tool that's out there today?
Yeah, absolutely. Last time we were together, I mentioned ProofPoint, and I've heard reports of 97, 98% effective. So it is definitely an industry leader for sure. There are other alternatives out there, probably less expensive, but I'm not sure that they can say that they have the same level of efficiency as ProofPoint. It's pretty impressive.
But what the important thing here is that if somebody is working as an analyst in a SOC, there's a pretty high probability that A, there will be some form of email security tool, and B, that email security tool will probably be ProofPoint. Is that safe?
That's a very good possibility.
Okay. So anyway, I've actually never seen ProofPoint in action. So what I'm curious about is, in the previous episode, we talked about how these tools kind of work from an engineering standpoint. But what I want to do today is I want to see ProofPoint in action, Richard. And you promised you'd have it queued up and ready for me. So I'm assuming you've got something to show me. I mean, can we just take a look at the interface and see what's happening on a day-to-day basis with ProofPoint?
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you should be able to see my screen now.
I see your screen now.
All right, fantastic. So first and foremost, this is kind of our dashboard. When you log in, the very first area you're going to be is a dashboard. It's an overall view of the alerts that ProofPoint has created for the analyst to investigate. So we talked last time about the emails being intercepted before they actually make it to the inbox. This is where they're intercepted and then presented to us as the analyst to go in and not only investigate them, but possibly take some additional steps. If for some reason ProofPoint maybe couldn't do something or didn't catch something till after the fact, which sometimes that happens if you get a whole lot of emails coming into the environment. So looking at the overall screen, you'll see a bunch of different cool little icons, and you'll see links and hashes of files and so forth. They're all meant to indicate what kind of phishing email that is.
Oh, wait, Richard. So hold on. So each line here is an alert email that's questionable. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Correct. And if you've got multiple versions of the same email being sent to maybe multiple email recipients, you'll also see a larger count here. In other words, it's not just one email that was sent to one person. Like if we look at this one right here, there were 87 intended email recipients, and 31 of them are actually at risk. And when you dive into these different alerts themselves, you can kind of see sometimes why they're at risk. And that has to do with the timing sometimes. Sometimes ProofPoint has a really cool ability. It's got like a built-in sandbox where in essence what it can do is it can look at links and follow any redirects that it has. So when you click on a link in an email, it doesn't always just go there and that's it. Sometimes it redirects you multiple times to try to avoid being detected.
Sure, I've seen that.
ProofPoint can actually find that, but sometimes it takes them a little bit as it goes through the sandboxing, especially when you get a whole lot of emails in, targeting your environment. And I've seen upwards of 1,000 emails come into an environment from one sender. So it can definitely get a little overwhelming for sure.
Okay, so one of the things I just assume at enterprise level security that this ProofPoint is going to be automatically doing stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So it is what's the word I'm looking for? It sets aside oh come on the old ships everybody would be sick. They would say the ship is quarantined. There we go.
Quarantine. Yeah.
So why are you looking at this? Is this kind of like oh, it's okay, let it through, or is this a yes or no thing at this point?
On a lot of emails that come in, it is a yes or no. In other words, 5 emails come in, ProofPoint can immediately identify something that stands out like a red, like a red flag kind of scenario where it's easy to detect, and it immediately blocks all those emails. They never make it to the inbox. They die here in ProofPoint, which is awesome. I mean, that's a huge, huge benefit. But that being said, there's still steps that we might take as analysts. We might decide to go ahead and block a domain or add an IP to a watch list if it's a sender IP that we're seeing a lot, just to kind of try to eliminate some of those situations. But at the end of the day, again, ProofPoint's not perfect. There are still things that happen, and attackers sometimes are still really good at avoiding detection, either initially or maybe even long-term eventually as well too. So sometimes we still have to go in and take some steps, even though we've got one of the best email security tools in the market.
Okay, so each one of these lines is basically, all right, I got to ask a couple of questions here. Okay, so number one, diagnosing potentially bad emails seems to be a complex thing. So I assume that ProofPoint comes with a preset bunch of rules and that I'm sure you can tweak these rules like you were describing earlier. You could manually say, we don't like this IP address or that or the other, but ProofPoint comes out of the box kind of preset with a bunch of stuff it's already going to do.
Agree. And yes, you can tweak it, you can modify it. And one thing I will say about ProofPoint, they have such a large client base that it allows them to create and generate some really amazing email intelligence that they use across platforms. So if ProofPoint is able to identify a new attack, a new malicious domain, a sender IP, things like that, it can automatically apply that to its technology, and almost immediately you're part of that crew and you're part of that group that now has that protections already in place. So it's a really nice built-in threat intelligence to be able to stay very, very on top of things.
Gotcha. Okay, so not only does this have some pre-made automated, I'm going to call it a template, Richard, because I don't know what the right word is, rule set, rule book, but not only that, for the low price of whatever you're paying for this tool, it's also continually and automatically updating itself. So as new intelligence comes, okay, that's very cool. All right, so show me something cool, Richard. Give me an incident. Sure. Okay, what do you call each line again?
So basically each one's an alert.
Alert. So show me an alert and let's do something cool with it.
Absolutely. So you can kind of see the little icons here. I think most people understand that malicious emails that come in are known as phishing emails. So when we see the little fish hook, that's really something along the lines of, a phishing email. They're trying to gain some sort of information from you. They're trying to fish for information.
Sure.
Then we have the little bomb. That one's actually kind of fun. Those are as a matter of fact, that's what I'm going to show you this morning is this link here. The bomb, malware, bad stuff, explodes, right? Those are the things we absolutely want to avoid. We've got imposters. There's a bunch of different little icons and so forth that tell you what kind of email it is. But I'm going to start with this one here, which is actually a malware. Now, one really cool thing that I love about ProofPoint is it has what's known as the ProofPoint browser isolation. It's basically a ProofPoint sandbox. Sandbox being it can go in there and actually take you to the site, let you see what happens there in a safe environment. Because if I were to say, go to this link in my browser, whatever happens at that site would happen to my machine. And I don't want to do that. So the browser isolation keeps me safe.
So this is probably running like a little container on the ProofPoint site or something like that. But it actually does go ahead and download it. Okay, cool. Can I see that?
Before we do that,
Before
we do that, let me show you a couple things over here too.
I get excited.
So we can see what's called global metrics. So this gives us an idea of how severe the threat is and also how widespread it is. In this particular event, we're actually the only ProofPoint customer that received this one. So this one might be a little bit targeted. We can also see how many emails came into the environment, how many of them were delivered or blocked. And the ones that were delivered, we can then see if they were delivered with the actual malicious link, or if ProofPoint had the opportunity to rewrite that link so that it kind of puts ProofPoint in the middle, so that if the user clicks on the link, instead of them being able to go directly to the malicious link, they're actually redirected kind of through ProofPoint. And ProofPoint can also put a block on that as well too, which is another little nice benefit. Where that actually can come into play, sometimes the initial page that you go to, remember I mentioned a minute ago how it redirects you? Well, ProofPoint might need a minute or two to be able to examine that link. So right off the bat, they may send that email with the link, and then recursively, once the sandbox is done, they see that that situation is malicious. So then they can kind of take some steps, some actions after the fact. So they can go backwards and do some things afterwards, which is pretty cool. But let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and click on our sandbox link. Let's see what this link actually takes us to. What do you say?
I say
And
that's
again,
risky to put on a public session, but let's see.
Well, right now, we really don't have anything too much to worry about. I'm not sharing anything that's proprietary or anything like that. But what we can see here is that this is obviously, not a very friendly looking domain or website, right? This is just a huge mess of garbly goop. But what we do have here is a link for a download.
So it's going to bring down a Excel spreadsheet. Can we actually look at the spreadsheet?
Yeah, it's what it looks like, right? It says bank statement, right? So if the email was good enough to trick the user to think that they were supposed to go here and then click the link, as soon as they get here, this download link is a bad idea. But I'm going to go ahead and click it because I'm in the browser isolation. So let's click it. Let's see what we get. Oh, we got a CAPTCHA. So we're trying, these attackers are trying to make it seem real, which is okay. I get you. But they want us to click on the pictures with the daisy. So now we'll click verify and boom. There we go. Download blocked, bank statement. We can actually see that this was actually blocked as a part of the ProofPoint browser protections. And we can see that if this were to actually get downloaded to our environment, we would absolutely be seeing a potentially malicious link or a potentially malicious file, an Excel spreadsheet. Now, Excel spreadsheets, how they're malicious is people use the macros. If you're familiar with macros, yeah, I mean, basically you can put a script in there and that script can do all kinds of bad stuff. So ProofPoint did its job here. It did at least give us a little bit of a rewritten URL, but we do have a risky situation here. One of these emails was delivered to an individual. And if we actually click on that, we can see that this email, info@cybernowlabs.com, actually received this email. It was delivered to their inbox and it was not rewritten. So that means that this user actually could visit this site if they opened up this email. So there is even still some action for me as an analyst to take here because it took ProofPoint a minute. This was not an easily recognized link that took you to a malicious site. It had to be checked. And after it got checked, then they said, wait a minute, no, this is not good. And it tried to kind of pull it back and it at least created the alert for us to look at. And
I got you. So it's kind of like a 0-day attack kind of a thing. And one got through. So do you call the person? Do you have access to their inbox? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, so what we would do is we would actually create an IT service ticket in our ticketing system known as Jira. And we would, in essence, go ahead and have any emails with this link, or we could also actually have it blocked from the sender. So we can see we've got an email here that actually is who it's from. This was actually who they tried to pretend like it came from. They tried to make it look like it came from info@CyberNow Labs. That's the envelope sender. So on the outside of the envelope, it said, oh, this is from info@CyberNow Labs. But when we got inside, it was actually from a different email address. So we could 100% block any future emails by blocking the sender IP. We could block the actual email itself that sent this, or we could do all of these, or we could also block this link as well too. And we would want to purge this email also. We would want to make sure that we remove this email from any inboxes.
Gotcha. Okay, so you can just go into everybody's inbox, or in this case, one person's inbox and just delete it.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. So that's a full process. Again, the tools are great. They're not perfect. They do a really good job most of the time. And analysts are still necessary because some things fall within gray areas, right? If that link if I drop this link into an open source intelligence like VirusTotal, and VirusTotal immediately told me, and I'm going to show this to you real quick here so you can see what I mean. Now, VirusTotal is an open source intelligence tool, gets used a lot. But if I drop this in here, look, VirusTotal is actually not telling me it's bad at this moment in time. So the initial look from ProofPoint didn't identify that this was bad. ProofPoint had to actually go and look at it, see what it did, and then take some action after that. So even though it let the email get through to the inbox, it still took some steps recursively to try to help us be safe. What do you think?
I'm impressed.
You want to do some email investigations for us, Mike?
Absolutely, man. Put me in, coach. I'm your man. So how much of your day in an 8-hour shift, how much of your day is spent in ProofPoint?
It depends on how many emails are coming in. You know, if we get a heavy load of emails, you might spend a decent amount of time in there. But believe it or not, you know, investigations on most of these alerts don't really take terribly much time. You can get them done relatively quickly. I mean, if I were to hop into this alert within 5 to 10 minutes, I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on and what steps need to be taken. So at that point, I can initiate my remediation actions, create that JIRA ticket, go ahead and get those processes going to purge those emails and you know, add that IP to a watch list, block list, same with the domain. And then I could write a full ticket, actually documenting the entire event with all of the pertinent information.
All right. So is there anything else we need to look at on the dashboard here?
Actually, I've got another alert I'll show you real quick. I think it's pretty cool.
Cool.
It's actually
yes, please.
It's actually what's that?
Yes, please.
So this one actually was a credential harvester. Now, what is a credential harvester? I know some people are probably asking, they might not be familiar with that. Well, think about anytime you log into anything. When you're typing in your username and your password, those are your credentials. That's what authenticates you. That's what actually allows you to, you know, be in that environment. So in credential phishing, they are trying to get you to enter your information. Now, we don't know exactly what was in this email, okay? And I can't go too deep into this one because it'll give too much information that I don't want to share publicly. But what I can do is I can at least show you what the browser isolation looks like on this one, which is pretty interesting. But once this pulls up. So what kind of site is this, Mike?
Well, it's clearly American Express.
Absolutely. So if the email is, again, presented really well, if it's created really well, this could trick the email recipient into thinking that they need to go and log in to their American Express account. And I would challenge anybody, even people that don't have much experience with computers, does this look like an American Express link to you?
Oh, Richard, I wish that all of us who know not to click on these types of phishing just by looking at the URL do it, but you and I both know we don't. Heck, I got caught on one of these just last week. It looked like a very comfortable site that I go to a lot, and I had my user ID and about half my password in there before I was like, wait a minute, look at this weird URL.
Yeah, and so even users on a daily basis, just pause when it's something critical like this right here. You know, pause before you go and keyboard bash your credentials, especially if the email itself is fishy. If it's got some sort of like sense of urgency, you know, you got to go do this now, or it's too good to be true, or whatever the case may be. Pause for a minute. Think before you click. That really is a good mentality to have. Okay,
so Richard, I know you can't drill down too deep, but either drill down, or if you can't tell me, what is ProofPoint doing with this particular thing? What's happening?
Yeah, so if we go back to the dashboard, what we can see is that right off the bat, ProofPoint blocked this. So something in the verification steps that ProofPoint was doing with the header or with the link itself was able to initially right off the bat identify this as not a real email, basically some sort of phishing email. And it could be that this link here shows up as malicious. I'll be honest, I haven't investigated this one fully, so I'm not sure if it will show up as malicious, but let's check. It does. We've got
Gotcha.
a 9 out of 90. Now that's a relatively low score, but we can absolutely see that every single one of these are identifying this as a potentially malicious phishing site. So that information is available. That intelligence is available to ProofPoint when this came in, and as good as this looks, ProofPoint was still able to identify. And actually, if you look at the global metrics, we can see that this has actually been seen in 970 other ProofPoint clients. So it's very widespread. So that intelligence has been able to identify this pretty easily.
Okay, so do you have to do anything? Do you write a ticket for this, or you just it's done its job, move on to the next one?
Exactly. In this case, ProofPoint pretty much did its job. Depending on your stock, I mean, you may take some steps here to, add this link, to your other list of domains you don't want to go to, block that domain so nobody else can ever go there. But if it comes in via email, ProofPoint's going to block it. So, I mean, that's definitely happening. So yeah, on one hand, you can go, well, the security tool did its job. There's really nothing else I can do. Let me go look at another email that might be more important or might be a bigger risk. So,
all right. So I'm going to force you to answer my earlier question. So just give me an average day. It doesn't have to be, I understand there's a variance depending on how much email. On an average day, how much time in hours or minutes would one spend in ProofPoint? What would be a normal day in your opinion?
In an enterprise environment, I could say easily probably a third to a half at bare minimum.
Wow.
And that's just because phishing is such a large opportunity for malicious threat actors to get into environments. Again, I've mentioned it before, carbon units are the weakest link. They're the biggest vulnerability. So phishing emails are absolutely a vessel of choice when it comes to malicious threat actors. So
very cool.
Yep, it's a lot of fun. It's actually really, it's always a double-headed sword or a double-sided sword, I guess you could say. You want to see emails come in that you're like, oh, this one was really good. Here's the steps I got to go take, but you don't want anybody to actually get, compromised in your environment. So it's always kind of interesting as an analyst because you want to see this stuff, but at the same time, you don't want it to affect your environment negatively. So it makes it kind of fun. It makes it challenging, and it's actually very rewarding to be able to go, hey, I investigated this and I was able to implement steps to improve the security in our environment and or keep our environment safe. So, all right.
No, I think that was absolutely amazing, but I really do appreciate that. What I found interesting is on an average day where it could be 1/3 to 1/2. I know every SOC is different. I'm not trying to pin you to a number, but I was prepared for you to say 20 minutes, so that was pretty interesting. Hey, Richard, thank you so much for giving me a tour of ProofPoint. Folks, if you really want to understand and learn about the types of tools that we use in a SOC, you need to be checking out CyberNow Labs, folks. They do an absolutely amazing job, and you'll probably get to hang out with Richard, and who knows, you might even get me to come say hello from time to time. So till then, this is Mike Meyers, and what's your name again, kid?
Richard Chapman.
And we are Two Bald Nerds. We will see you next week with another interesting episode. Till then, bye-bye. If you like Two Bald Nerds, check out our entire playlist right here. It's a lot of fun. We'll see you there.